Great skills again by him. Oh, marvellous goal by Lewis.
Welcome to the Rangers Journal.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rangers Journal on this Tuesday, the 16th of December. My name is Doug, and we're here with another night of thrilling conversation about the one and only Glasgow Rangers and the players within, whom we love most of the time, some of the time, okay, a little bit of the time. And some of those players are the ones that we're going to touch on this evening as we look at the farcical transfer window that was run by Kevin Thelwell and the players that we would like rid of quick, sharp. Not only them, but just players in the squad in general that coming into this January transfer window we think could be good ones to sell out from the club to either raise money to take in some new players or just to create space, be that by creating wages or just getting bodies out the door. I've got two great podders to talk to me about that tonight. So first of all, welcome in Marty. How are you doing this evening?
Fine, thank you, Doug. It's nice to be here and join the group again.
And I've got John as well. How are you getting on, John?
Not bad, thanks, Doug. Here the night after a Rangers win, it's always a good time to be talking about who to sell, who to keep, who to buy. Absolutely,
and that is where we will sort of kick off this evening. We'll touch a little bit on the game from last night, obviously a Monday night game, which a bit more unusual for us these days, but slightly different. So, it wasn't a great performance, but we got the 3 points, which is the ultimate main thing. And one of the things, just sort of aside from the game as well, that I really liked was the fact that, Danny Rule and his pressers after the match and since hits on that point about how, it wasn't a perfect performance, but the most important thing was the 3 points. And if you contrast that to, the type of things we were hearing from our former manager, and indeed the type of things being heard by those across the water from their manager right now, it's, I think, really reassuring to have a manager in place who understands that that is the most important thing, especially right now where, as horrendous as this season has been, we're somehow still not quite completely out of the title race. So, yeah, really interesting one. Marty, let's just say, not the greatest of games, but we did manage to get the win with a really good header for Fernandez from a beautiful, must be said, cross from the returning Dujon Sterling, which I think everyone was delighted to see him just on the pitch and really kind of just settling straight back into things. I think obviously goal line clearance and setting up this goal. So a really great performance for him. But what were your thoughts on the game overall?
I think we played better in the first half than we did the second. I think we were a little bit more struggling to find that final ball in the second half. I agree with what you've said there about Sterling coming back. I actually think he had a reasonably good game considering, especially if you could look at his B game that he played recently as well. He wasn't particularly good in that from what I've read up on. So it's nice to see that he's actually come into the team and performed well as well. It's not like he's just come in to make the numbers. He's actually had a decent game, and to get the assist for the goal as well, it seems to be somewhat of a trait for Fernandez now, getting in and getting that header into the corners or getting a goal with his head. So it's a nice thing to see that we're starting to create opportunities and there's players that are stepping up to take them.
Yeah, absolutely. Fernandez is really providing an aerial threat that we've not had in quite a while, I think, both from a defensive and offensive point of view, which is good to see. And one of the positive signs from him that maybe suggests he could be a player that will last slightly longer than we maybe initially thought. John, we've got obviously the match ratings up on there. It's a nice change to see it awash with greens and Barron and blue there. Which, as I say, although not the greatest of performance, I think reflects the fact that the team, had to dig in. We were under the cosh for a good solid 30 to 40 minutes almost from Hibs at times. And if they'd been a bit more on the ball, it could have been a tougher game. But again, these are performances that I don't think we'd have seen earlier in the season. We were struggling and grinding games to draws, whereas now we're turning those draws into wins.
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me. You can see Barron, I think, epitomises that. Somebody getting a chance, trying to take it, and saying, right, I'm going to force my way into this, and I'm going to do the dirty stuff. Barron's performance isn't great because of great passing, chance creation, anything like that. It's energy, it's effort. It's I'm going to go out there and do what needs to be done. And I think seeing him step up and taking on that almost responsibility as somebody who's not considered a senior player but could become a senior player in this squad, it's great to see. And I think at times when you've got Raskin in the team, you kind of have a thought as to what Raskin does. And I think what you're seeing from Barron is that kind of thing we think that Raskin does at times, is Barron can step into that role. I thought overall last night was quite a frustrating night for me. It could have been a much better result. Decision making, final third especially, needs a lot of work. That final pass, when to move it. Some of the runs that people were making or not making, certainly a couple of times in the first half, you just think we could really make the most of this. We could get in, get more chances created. And as much as all those numbers have taken a step up in the right direction since Russell Martin's gone, it could be better. And I think that's the frustrating part of the signs of little bits. There's signs of other things that are maybe not as positive, but seeing those positive signs, and if we can take that next step, it's really encouraging in some way.
Absolutely. I was listening to Heart and Hand earlier on today, and the guy, forgive me, I forgot his name, but they had on, I thought put it really, really well. We're not getting a tune out of the team. He's not getting a tune out of the team, but he's getting a rhythm. I thought that it's a really good turn of phrase that I think I really do feel sums up the team right now. It's we're certainly not hitting any heights, but he's getting the victories, which is the main thing, and also he's reflecting that himself, as I said before, in his pressers. He's telling that for all we used to complain about, for example, Clement telling us we played well when we played poorly. Danny Rolo's coming out and going, well, we played poorly, but we won, and that's the most important part right now, which I think is a really big thing and a really positive, because it feels like we've got a manager that sees what we see and appreciates what we appreciate and is aiming for the same things. Marty, we touched a bit on Sterling. John's talked about Barron there. Got a comment here as well from ADWTF6539. I thought Chermiti had some better moments. I've seen a few people comment on Chermiti in this game that there were times that he looked like there might be a little something there. I still think, obviously there's still a long way to go. He still looks like a player lacking in confidence. He had a couple of shots and chances that he didn't really quite make the best of. One straight into the goalkeeper, one that he should have rounded the keeper but didn't. I still see a player who's got the physical attributes. He's a big lad and he can fight players off, and he's got moments where his touch is decent and he can set things up and hold up the ball. But he still looks like a poor striker. Because he's not scoring, he's not getting. We're going to go on and talk about him in more detail later. But how did you find his performance in that game? And did you see any of these sort of slight glimmers of hope that others have been talking about?
Well, he was certainly more involved, especially more so in the first half. He was getting involved. I'm a little bit concerned the fact that he was having to drop a little bit deeper to get involved and like to play up a little bit. But again, for me, the role of a striker is to be taking shots, and you could probably count on the one hand the amount of shots he had. So it's not really the role that I think he should be playing. It's nice to see him actually being more involved rather than just being a passenger like he has been. But again, I just don't feel that he's that attacking threat that really we should be looking at for a centre forward for Rangers.
You're bang on. I just looked up how many shots he had, and he had 5, so quite literally count on one hand. So bang on there. John, another player that I think is worthy of a mention is Clinton Nsiala, who's finally got on the pitch for some minutes yesterday. Good to see him, as I say, getting some minutes on the pitch. I think he is a player like most of us have talked about at some point. He showed promise last season that he could potentially again have something to offer us, and obviously right now we've got a few injuries, a couple of players out and unavailable, and obviously with Giga due to be away for AFCON now, we might see him in a couple of games moving forward as well.
Yeah, really good to see him get some game time last night. I always thought he had something about him. Yes, he kind of lacked some of the physical attributes, and he did get ragdolled a couple of times last season, but he was a young player. We've got to learn that stuff. You're not always going to get a younger player coming through with the peak physical attributes and knows how to handle himself. So you've got to learn that. And I thought when he came on, he looked quite assured for somebody who's not played April, I think it is. He's not been involved in terms of starting a game or anything since, so that's a fair amount of time. I thought it looked quite calm, quite composed. And my only issue slightly is his minutes haven't been managed a bit better, because are we going to throw him in Sunday now? You know, we're kind of at that point of a problem I have just now is squad minutes. Look at Cameron, Inciala, Curtis, these guys we've been talking about. It's not them being world beaters, but it's getting them up to speed so that if we need to bring them in and have them starting games, they're not completely cold. So I think for somebody who's not had that, it was really good to see him back. A left-sided centre-back with a left foot who can pass. I think he was the one who was starting off the move for Gassama's chopped off goal, where he kind of, you could feel a few times with Fernandez, I think Inciala, people go, just humph it, get rid of it. You know, you've got that nervousness about a centre-back playing football, but in actual fact, they were quite calm and in control of it. So it was quite nice to see that. So yeah, hoping he gets more game time now, because we need all the options we can get.
Yeah, Marty, John's kind of touched on it there. Obviously, we've got a huge game coming up on Sunday, a chance to cut the gap between ourselves and Hearts. I don't think it's unfair to say that Hearts will go into that game as favourites. You know, they've beaten Celtic. There's obviously, although they've had a few stickier results recently, they're still playing well, and certainly playing better than we have been. So that's going to be a tough game, and their defence will be really important in that. Just, you know, what are your thoughts? I would assume, having had, you know, Sterling back for 2 games now, that to me the logical choice would potentially be moving Sterling into the centre, and then you pick between Tav and Aarons as to who you want to play at right back, and then Gassama will come back in to play further up. What do you have any particular preference? You know, do you think you'll do something like that, or could we see NCL, like John suggested, potentially getting thrown in for a game of that size?
I think Sterling will probably be picked first out the two of them, purely on minutes played. He's obviously got to be the fitter out the two, but I think NCL has got a real opportunity of being brought on, especially if one of them gets injured or tired. Probably Sterling again. But I don't have a problem with either of them starting, because they've shown that they've got the ability to do the job. And I know I'm deviating a little bit, but I do want to mention Magoma's goal line clearance. There's not very many people that I've seen talking about it, so I think it's one of them that's sadly got forgotten, and I think it's a shame, really, because he actually done really well to clear it off the line.
I think, was it not Sterling that had the goal line clearance? I think it was. I think it was Sterling did that. That was one.
Sterling.
Was either Sterling or Magoma? I couldn't remember, but I mean, it
a lot
just
of people
shows how
talking about how he affected at both ends of the pitch, clearing off line and obviously creating.
Well, it just shows, like I mentioned earlier, the fact that he had that B game where he was so poor, and he's come in and he's actually done a job, and it just shows that he's obviously given the opportunity, he can actually do the job. So, as you said, with Jigga out for the African competition, it'd be nice to see Sterling and Ciala brought in and given that opportunity. Obviously, we've got our two main centre backs out. So now's their time to shine as such. They need to show their worth.
Absolutely. I mean, I think obviously with that Sterling game, and that was his first game back, so I don't think it's unfair to let him off with a poor performance there. And that was a few weeks ago now as well. So he's obviously built back up and back into the team, and at the right time, like you say, with our two probably first choice centre backs out, or one of them anyway. Certainly, then it's a good time for him to be coming back into the team. John, just before we move on, the last player I kind of wanted to touch on, I think, was Mikey Moore. I think, again, another performance that shows that, you know, if there's going to be any strong creativity in this team, it's going to probably come from him. Again, he kind of showed, although he wasn't maybe quite as active and he's been in some games, he still had that drive forward when he gets the ball. He, particularly in kind of the first 25 minutes, I thought, you know, every time he touched the ball, he's driving forward. He looks dangerous. He either was getting fouled. He would have two players on him a lot of the time as well. Finlay Curtis, I noticed, was getting kind of doubled up on occasion as well. But yeah, Moore in particular, more and more week to week, looks like he's going to be the one, as I say, that's going to be the creative spark for this team.
Very much so. Really, really positive to see somebody who just wants to get the ball and drive forward and drive at defence. I think just some of his decision making, that final pass, was the bit for me that I kind of picked up on at points, but he was also one of the ones I thought he's running off the ball. He sometimes, you can see him, he's wanting the ball in what might be the ideal position for him and the way he plays a game. There's one in the first half. I think Diamande was breaking forward and Moore was almost on his shoulder instead of trying to get wide where the space was. But those are minuscule criticisms in his performance in terms of what he was offering us and what he'd done in the game. And excited to see where this, he's just back from injury. How can he kick this on to the next level? And I think he's even said that himself. He's get goals and more assists to add to his game. And if he can do that, be an exciting 5 months left of the season with him.
Yep, absolutely. Not only that, I think the mental side of things, mentality, he seems like he's dealt with that really well. Because he had a lot of criticism to start this season off, in terms of not playing well enough, and particularly with the comparisons being made to Finlay Curtis and him potentially blocking Curtis's route. He's come through a lot in terms of criticism and dealing with that and pushing on, and it seems like he's dealt with that well, and it's quite encouraging that, you know, he's kind of said, you know, that I've come to a big club. That was, you know, I've come to learn to deal with these things, and particularly when he was asked about the idea of him being recalled or going back, and he just seemed to have no time for it. It's like, no, I'm here to learn and to develop. So hopefully there will be more to see, and I'm excited to see how he does, in particular if we can bring in some better players around him as well. Like you say, I think we could get some good stuff from that second half of the season. Okay, so moving on, obviously, as the title of tonight's video is, we're going to sort of talk about players that we could potentially sell in the January window. We've obviously all, I think, talked and I don't want to go so far as to say fantasized, but certainly thought in our imaginations what we might be able to bring in or would like to bring in to help bolster the squad and hopefully push on in the second half of the season. But the other half to that equation is obviously to sell players, both to raise money and to get create spaces in the squad for new players to come in and save wages, etc. So we're going to have a look at a couple of players tonight, and I'm going to challenge the guys to give us reasons why we either should or should not sell these players. But spoiler alert, they're all pretty sellery. So we shall go through them, and I'll put a wee poll in the chat for each one as well to let you guys put your vote in as to whether you think that they should definitely be sold or not. And do pop your comments in as we're going. We'll bring those up as we're talking. So the first player we've got for this evening is Jerry Gassama. Gassama obviously came in early doors in the Russell Martin tenure and really was an absolute smash hit for the first few weeks. He was instrumental in getting us through the first few rounds in European competition, where he seemed to just be scoring for fun. But then, as soon as the qualifiers basically for Europe stopped, it was as if switch turned, and his effectiveness has basically plummeted since. Aside from Moore, who obviously in recent weeks has come in, Gassama has been the only other player that I think you could say has been a really dynamic attacking player. If we were going to have anything creative or exciting happening, it was likely going to come through him. He is still young. He's only 22. But I think the thing with him is obviously we got him on a good deal due to the circumstances at Sheffield Wednesday at the time. And he does have a decent value. He's valued at around about 4.5 million. And there are reportedly clubs, a number of clubs interested in him, the principal one being Villarreal, who are potentially interested. So we're kind of bringing him up as a player who, although there is the potential to keep him, and there are reasons to keep him, which we'll touch on, he could be one to sell from a monetary point of view, both that will make a bit of profit on a quick turnover, and that allows us to reinvest. I'll go with, I think there's good reasons for both sides for this one. So I think nothing too hard. So I'll go with Marty to start with. If I was to challenge you, Marty, with what do you think are the primary reasons to potentially sell Gassama in January?
Potentially sell. Probably, as you've said, the fact that we would earn a profit from him. Possibly put a sell-on fee on there so that we could obviously earn a little bit more further down the line when he's valued higher and he's obviously a little bit older and more experienced. But yeah, outside of that, I wouldn't really have a reason to sell him. So
do you think he's been good enough thus far, up until now?
Well, like you said, they started off really well. It was like a bullet out of a gun, really. But he has gone off the boil a little bit these last few weeks. He's probably been guilty of holding the ball for a little bit too long and not making that decisive pass. But outside of that, I don't think his play's been desperately bad. There's been players in the team that have played worse than him week in and week out. So I can't say that he's a standout player that's negative for the club. I think his performances have dropped a little bit, but obviously with him now being linked with his old manager, hopefully he can bring that spark back and get him hitting form again.
And AJ sort of, I brought this up a wee second ago, but AJ said here he's still young and inexperienced. Give him time. Do you think, from your point of view, he's someone that is worth investing that time into? Do you think he's got a higher ceiling to reach than what we've seen so far?
I believe so. I mean, like they've said, he's only 22. He's still got to build his, what I would call, man strength. Once he's got that, he's not going to be as easily shoved off the ball as we have seen a few times this season. So I certainly think there's going to be a development there where he can obviously improve that final ball as well and realise that he doesn't need to hold on to it for so long. And obviously that comes with support from his teammates. But that final ball, if he was to improve that would create a lot more goals for us as well. So there's definitely room for improvement there, and for me, his value would only increase.
And in terms of the value, I think it was also AJ in the comments there, he's suggesting 2 million profit is nothing. Is that something that you think we need to push hard on in terms of getting more for him? Do you think we're likely to get more for him if we keep him?
I think further down the line we'd get more from him than we will in January or even in the summer. I think he's one of them that you need to give him time. You need to give him the opportunity to grow as a player, and with growing comes value as well. Obviously, a serious injury or something like that would be detrimental to his price, but I think if he's given the game time and he can show those improvements that we're all hoping and expect to see from him, his value would only increase. So I would like to keep him for that reason, because he's got something that can be value to the club, to value to the team. He's already shown, although he's gone off the boil a little bit recently, he's already shown that he's got qualities that will help us get goals. So I certainly wouldn't like him to leave, and I'd be concerned that if he was to leave, no matter what price we got for him, that we wouldn't be replacing like for like. So for me personally, I would like to keep him at least for a couple of years, see how he gets on, see how he progresses, and then look at possibly selling him on.
Okay, doke. And we'll come to yourself, John, to the flip side of that coin, looking at the reasons to potentially sell him. As a sort of a start for 10, one of the things that sort of interesting, like if you look at, obviously we've got his career over the last couple of seasons there with Sheffield Wednesday and UPenn. His numbers are pretty steady across the years there, and they're not numbers that really scream to me good enough for Rangers potentially. And I think that's been the big concern in his time so far, is obviously outside of that first sort of 2 months or so, the actual output, there's a lot of decent play, but the decision making has been particularly poor, and it's something that Roll has not singled out Gassama about, but has mentioned across the team. So if I was to put the door down to you and say, what are the reasons that we should be selling Gassama in January?
Decision making's a big one of them. Seen it last night as well. He was going through, should have passed it, couldn't pass it, took an extra touch, tag a shot, didn't do it. My concern with Jerry Gassama is mental toughness. I'm not convinced he has the mental strength to be a successful player here. I think too many games I've watched him, he just shrinks when he doesn't get things his own way. He's not playing well. He just vanishes out of the game completely. And my concern with him right now is I don't see that. I don't see the Barron in him. I don't see the Mikey Moore in him that we've just been talking about, where he goes, you know what, I'm going to take this bull by the horns and I'm going to make something happen. He almost looked better last night coming off the bench as an impact player than in any game I've recently started. So that would be my concern. The talk of the £2 million profit, well, we don't have a successful player trading model and haven't posted great financial results. £2 million profit, £2 million profit goes straight back into buying more players. That, we're sitting saying that we're not creating enough chances, not scoring enough goals. We need to reinvest. So wherever we could make a profit on a player, especially somebody within 6 months, might not be the business we necessarily want to do, but it might be the business we have to do. And if you're putting those sell-on clauses in, Gassama to me, a Villarreal, if you've got Villarreal and you can get rid of about 5-6 million from them and a good sell-on, I'd bite your hand off for it. Bite your hand off for it. Because what could we do with that 5-6 million in terms of bringing in 2 or 3 players who could come in, experienced players, so maybe not massive transfer fees and exorbitant wages, bring a couple of players in with a bit more experience who can actually be the players that we need right now. I'm also slightly concerned that Rowe has come in and it almost feels like he's dipped even further in his performances. You could have been expecting that Rowe will come in and you'll see him get the confidence, but Rowe's kind of moved him about, right wing, back, right wing, left wing. He's never really settled anywhere. So there's bits in there that I just don't feel the fits there for us with Jerry Gassama.
Could that be a reason that he's not performing at his best because he keeps getting moved around?
It could be. Or is that the output of not playing well, is trying to figure out somewhere else for him to play to get that performance? I don't know. I think what you've seen initially was an impact player. If you look back to those early European games, you off the bench, Panathinaikos, home and away, scoring. You saw it last night. It may just be that he's not going to be a starter for us, and he is an impact player off the bench. Will he accept that? I don't know. But if he's going to be that type of player, you maybe better cashing in now while his stock's a bit higher.
We've got a suggestion from Shona. Sell Gassama and get Sima. Would you be up for that as a swap?
Right, cards on the table right now. If you talk about transfer fees, fine. We have to talk about package. Abdallah Sima's on 40 or 50 grand a week. It's the same Czerny conversation. We talk about Czerny was a £5-6 million player. He's on 60 grand a week. Their time is gone, I think, and pure fees and players, yeah, but they are going to be too expensive on a weekly basis.
You don't think he'll happily drop his wages to play for the Famous?
He might. You never know. I could be total like Grinch here, Grinch mode, and I don't mean to be, but he might do.
It'd have to be a significant drop. I mean, if he's on 60k, fair enough. You're dropping 5k or something. I can understand a player maybe doing that, but he'd be taking an over 50% pay cut, which
yeah.
Fair enough. I might do that to play for Rangers, but I don't know about Abdi Lissima.
You've been a much bigger pay cut than that, 50%.
give me 5 drumsticks and a can of iron brew, and I'll play for Rangers. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've good arguments from both sides there. I think Gassama is one that for me really could fall either way. I think there's a lot of sense in potentially selling him, as you say, while potentially the iron's hot and he does have a bit of credit behind him, and we can make a bit of money due to the urgency of us needing to bring in players, and that would go a long way to doing that. He doesn't seem to have that output that we need. He seems to be slipping in the pecking order. That might be unfair because we obviously are having injuries and stuff, although the fact that we are having injuries and stuff and he's still not starting every game could be telling. So yeah, I think that there are reasons, but equally I think Marty made some good points about giving, and in the comments as well, about giving him time. Maybe he can grow into the role, but we'll see. I'll pop a wee poll into the comments, guys, for you. Should we sell Gassama in January, yes or no? Based on the kind of discussion we've had there, I'll leave that up for a minute or two while we move on to our next player of discussion, which is Yusuf Chermiti, the man who has been the topic of great discussion since the day he walked through the door for that £8 million, possibly rising to 10 transfer fee, one of the biggest outlays in Rangers history for a player who really did not seem to have the CV to back it up. It was very much a hit and hope, I think, from Thelwell, a player that obviously Thelwell clearly likes. Obviously, he brought him in to Everton for I think it was about 15 million, if I remember correctly, that they paid for him. He had good write up from Sporting in terms of his potential. We obviously saw Thelwell come out in video as well to talk about his potential and his numbers and his stats behind the scene, which is one thing. And obviously myself as a stat man, I love a number or two, but he really has not shown anywhere near enough on the pitch, and certainly at times has looked the complete opposite. We've just said he does have an element of physicality to him. He can potentially develop still. Again, a young player. He's 21, so a year younger than Gassama. So maybe he develops into something. Around about Chermiti, we're more talking, I think, probably about a loan than actually selling him. Braga have been rumoured to be interested in taking him on loan, which obviously that would be back to his home country, so potentially a little bit more comfort and for him there. And the kind of idea I think I would propose for that would kind of be an ideal scenario would be if he goes to Braga, gains some confidence, absolutely tears it up, and then comes back feeling really good, ready to attack a new season. And then, we potentially then have options of, right, maybe Braga want to sign him, maybe someone else becomes interested, or indeed maybe he comes back in what is probably the lesser known pathway. He comes back and manages to reintegrate into the team and can become the player that we'd want him to be, which would be someone that then goes on and bangs 30 odd goals for us, and we can then sell for 15 million and thus make it a happy ending. Is that blue sky thinking? No pun intended, or could there be something to it? The other scenario, which is probably the more likely, is that he goes to Braga on loan and does enough for them to offer us 3 or 4 million, and we just go fine and cut our losses. John, I'm going to start with you this time. You're going to get the more difficult job in this scenario. Why should we keep Yusuf Chermiti?
Thanks for that. The boy's struggling for confidence. Let's straight away. There's no confidence there whatsoever in terms of what he's trying to do, what he's been asked to do, and playing as a striker. And I think from last night, there's a chance he had near the end where he just blotters the ball straight at the keeper. I was a player who's like, I just need to get this on target. I'll do whatever I can just to get it on target so that it's on target. I'm probably not even fussed about it getting in, just get a shot on target. So we need to come up with a solution that is going to help build his confidence up a little bit. If that's staying here, we need an absolute powerhouse of a goal scorer beside him, who is first choice, first pick, and I mean beyond Bojan Majowski. Somebody who takes all the pressure away, because while Majowski's had a couple of good games, got some goals, he's still got a bit to do. He still has to get the numbers in and the performances in that we would expect from him as the kind of senior striker. So if we can do that, what I seen last night was some touches, some hold-up play, some focal point, the main striker there. I don't think the way we play suits any striker that we've got. We don't create enough chances. We don't play in a way that... You talk about saying putting Dessers back in this team. I don't think it makes a difference right now, because although Dessers could maybe come up with something on his own, still relied on good balls into him, balls over the top, all that kind of stuff. We don't do that. So there are attributes there. I little by little, I see things from Chermiti that says, right, is he going to be a goal scorer for this team? Maybe not. Is there a player there who could be a focal point in an attack, who is there to lay things off, to connect the play? Maybe. Last night, I think I did see a little bit of that, but he needs players around him then that suit playing off a focal point. A Mikey Moore who can run beyond, and wide players who can run beyond and filter off of that. So there is an opportunity there that Yusuf Chermiti could be a very good squad player. I can't believe I'm saying that for somebody that has value. That you pick and choose when he comes in for specific types of games, because that physical presence we haven't seen from Majowski, you're never going to get it for Danilo, so you're going to have to bring it in from somebody else. So Chermiti gives us a different option. If we can build his confidence, get him much more comfortable on the ball, sit and say, this is your role, this is what we want you to do. Don't focus unnecessarily on having to get double figures between now and the end of the season. And we bring in another striker who is that guy. We can potentially build him up internally so that he has a role, and we're not thinking of him as an £8 million goal scorer. We're thinking of him as an £8 million forward, if that makes sense, just as a front player, and take that pressure off him, because I think he's just crumbling under it right now of, you're an £8 million player, you have to have scored 25 goals before we've, Santa's been. And that's, he's not Marco Negri. Nobody is really, was in the way Marco Negri done it. But so I think we have to find his role and work around him, bringing in another striker who will just be the absolutely undoubted number one and take that pressure off him. I think that's the only way he can succeed here. If any chance of succeeding, I should say.
Yeah, some good thoughts there. You've done a good job on that one. A couple of interesting suggestions there. Just before I go over to Marty for the other side of that, the Gassama poll ended 50-50. So our chat split down the middle there on whether or not we should sell Gassama, which I think is pretty representative of the situation around him, to be honest. So thank you for participating in that one. Marty, I'm going to come to you on probably the easier of the two arguments. Why should we sell Chermiti. And in particular, Shona here has said, I'm willing to give Chermiti more of a chance than Danilo, to be honest. So in amongst that, why should we sell Chermiti, and should it be ahead of Danilo, or should we be looking to sell Danilo first?
Wow, all you have to do is look at the stats that you've put up. 64 games, 4 goals. Come on, the guy's supposed to be a striker. My 8-month-old baby could score more goals than he can. For a guy that's worth 8 million going up to 10, and the 15 that Everton paid, he must have the best agent in the world, because there's no way that he's value for money. It doesn't matter how many seasons he's going to be at Rangers, he's never going to recoup that money. And if he does, I'll be absolutely amazed, because he's just... I agree with John. His link-up play in that last game was an improvement. But like I says, your main job as a striker is to score goals. He was brought in to be the next big thing, the next Dessers, the next Morelos. And I've seen none of that. The guy... He's like a sheep with a sheepdog chasing him. The guy's clueless. He doesn't know how to score a goal. The goal that he has scored was, let's be honest, a fluke. And he's not got that killer instinct that a striker needs. Attacking midfielder to link up play, possibly. Striker, not a chance. For me, I would get him out the door as quick as he came in it. And I think, considering the circumstances and considering the guy who was so instrumental in bringing him in has now been sacked, I think that the guys at the board and the owners are now considering whether he's value for money and whether they have to cut their losses and take a loss on him. Because I think even a comment that Ali McCoist made the other day, there should be an inquiry into how we paid that money for him. Because there's absolutely no way. I don't care how good the report is for Sporting and how good the potential is that he's got. At 21, he should be starting to bang them goals in. He's got plenty of experience. He's been at 2 big clubs, Everton and Sporting. And if he can't find the back of the net in either of them 2 teams, he's got no place at Rangers. He should have never have been here. So the quicker he leaves, the better for me.
I think a lot of people probably feel the same. But to find out, I have put a poll in the chat, guys. So do give that a look. Should we loan out Yusuf Chermiti? You can take loan to mean sell if you wish. But should we be looking to get him out the door in some form or fashion this January? Let us know via that poll. We're halfway through, so I'm just going to take this time to thank everyone for tuning in and watching this evening. If you're not subscribed, please do hit the subscribe button. It helps us a lot with the old YouTube algorithm. You can also hit the notification bell to get notified whenever we go live, which is practically every day of the week. And we also do pre and post match content for all of Rangers matches as well. We're delighted to be sponsored by Bluebell's Bar at Puerto del Carmen in Lanzarote. If you're ever out in that way, do give them a look up and tell them that the Rangers Journal sent you. You'll definitely get a warm welcome there if you do. It's a family-friendly bar. You can eat and drink there. You can have a nice quiet evening or a party, depending on what's on. And of course, they show all of Rangers matches live, so you don't need to miss out on the football even while you're away. You can sit overlooking the sea or in a shady bit of the bar and enjoy your beverage of choice while watching the Teds in the sun. So, as I say, do give the Bluebells a look if you're out in that part of the world. Okay, the next player we're going to have a look at, the next 2, I think are really easy ones. Let's start with the easiest, in fact, just to get him out of the way. Kevin Thelwell, everyone's favourite Kevin Thelwell. Yes, he is still a Rangers player. Some of you may have forgotten until he appeared on the bench yesterday. He is indeed still a Rangers player. He obviously had a mini renaissance at the beginning of the season when he got to play a few games under Russell Martin, who seemed to have a little bit of faith in him, but has not been basically seen since. As I say, until he appeared on the bench the other night, which is likely simply due to our injury issues. I don't think I'm really going to split this one up, guys, because I'm pretty sure there are no reasons to keep Kevin Thelwell. If you can think of one, then by all means throw it in. But I'll just start with yourself, Marty. He's out of contract in the summer. highly doubt that we're going to be offering him a new one. He's not featuring in the team. He's not rated by any fan that I'm aware of. So to me, it would seem a logical choice that if we can get him out the door for basically anything in January, then that would be a win-win situation. He'd get to go somewhere where he can play football. We'd free up a space and free up a wage. His wages, I don't think he's on anything phenomenal, but he will be on a reasonable wage, having come in from the Championship. So it won't be a tiny amount, but it's not a huge amount either. I don't think he's only meant to be worth about 500-600k. Hull City are said to be interested in him. He's played, obviously, in terms of he's played for Rangers, he's played for Everton, and they tend to like players that have had that type of career path. And they obviously took John Lundstrom in the summer. And I have included Birmingham there just because he did go there and have a decent loan spell. So maybe Birmingham might fancy him on the cheap if they can get it. Is there any reason that you can think of that we would keep Kieran Dowell? Or like I say, is it just a case of if we can get anything from him, get him out the door?
I'd probably agree with the latter part. If we can get anything for him, I'd get him out the door rather than letting him go for free. Obviously, he could be signed on a early contract, but if we could agree a fee for him to be released early, then I'd be more than happy for him to go, because at the moment he's nothing more than a burden on the wage bill. He's not bringing nothing to the team, nothing really to the club. He's got experience, but it's not first team quality. So if he wants to ply his trade down in the Championship, then he'd have more than a few Rangers fans glad to see the back of him.
Absolutely, John. As Marty said there, he could sign pre-contracts with teams. So, like in my head, my ideal scenario would basically be a Kamara-esque scenario where maybe he signs for someone and we turn around and say, "Look, give us 50k and you can have him now."
I wouldn't even go that far. If somebody will take him on loan for 6 months and pay his wages in full, thank him very much. See you later. I don't even think as a player you need to, or for me, I'd be fussed to be even getting a transfer fee for. Just get his wages off the bill, get him out the door. So that to me is ideal scenario. It would make it easier and probably more attractive for somebody to take him on, because then even that club could say, "Oh, we're only taking him on for 6 months and see how it goes." Might be quicker getting him out the door that way.
Indeed, yeah. I don't think people would be too enraged if we were to just, like you say, get him off the wage bill and free up some wages for someone who'll contribute, because it's quite clear that Kieran Dowell isn't going to be contributing, I think. So a nice, easy close and shut one there. I'll not bother putting that one out on a poll. I think most people, I'm pretty confident that the poll will be a winner to sell him. Should we loan out Chermiti? The chat says 55% no, we should not loan out Chermiti. So there's quite a few people willing to give him a chance there, which is an interesting one. Yeah, that's I'm a little bit more surprised by that one. Quite split there, but yeah, people up for giving him a go. We comment here from AG. Are we going to talk about Asgard? We've not included Asgard sort of for two reasons. One, we've mostly included players where there's been links that are to go out of the club, because they're the more likely to go, and so we think that there's value in talking about, yes, we should sell them. And also, to me, Asgard's a player we should try and sell in a summer window where he's more likely to retain his value, and especially he could be at the World Cup still. So again, similar with Raskin, that could boost his value if he goes and doesn't, okay time. I think he's more likely to feature off the bench for his national team. But even if he has a couple of decent appearances off the bench, I think it probably makes more sense that we look at his look at him more long term, which I'm sure we will do in future podcasts, whereas now we're kind of focusing on January. So that's why he's not been included in this one. But the final main player that has is Joe Rothwell. Rothwell, again, another player that since Rule has come in has not really featured for the side. He was someone that there was a bit of excitement about when he first arrived, he was the sort of more experienced player that we signed. Off the top of my head, was he the only player we signed that was not in his 20s, possibly? Well, I say not in his 20s, not including players who were 17, 18, 19. I think he was possibly the only one. So he was meant to be the player that was going to be that sort of, not that he's as good, but that kind of Stephen Davis-esque calm figure with experience that could spring the ball about, that could push forward as well. But we've only really seen fits and starts of the player that he was last season, where he was, by all accounts that I've heard, was excellent in his previous season on loan at Leeds. But yeah, we've not really seen that, and as I say, he has now pretty much faded out the team. Valued at around about £1 million. There is a lot of interest in Joe Rothwell. I think he is still very popular in sort of the Championship, League One areas. So quite a few teams have been linked. Sheffield United appear to be the favourites at the moment to potentially take him on, but there has been links with Derby, Middlesbrough, and Stoke, all interested in potentially taking Joe Rothwell from us in January. John, I'll start with you this time. I'll give you the easy one and say why should we sell Joe Rothwell, and is he kind of similar to Dowell in that, you know, we signed Joe Rothwell on a free transfer, so is this a case of this is a player we shouldn't be difficult about and just basically again look to just get him out the door and off the wages, or do you want to see us try and get a decent fee?
I think we should be trying to get something, that's for sure. I think he's still got decent pedigree down in the Championship. So I think there'll be, you're looking there, Sheffield United and the likes, if they're looking at him, they should be willing to pay for him. Not an exorbitant amount of money, perhaps, but if we're going to be, looking at selling him, I'm fairly certain there's going to be something in there in terms of his contract that we're going to have to pay something towards him as well for moving him on so fast with us. So I'd definitely be looking to get some money back on him. It just hasn't worked for some bizarre reason. And I don't know why. I wish I could put a finger on it to try and fix it, but it's not going to change. The midfield, as it is, even without him in the team, needs ripped up and rethought as to how it works. And he's not the cog that's missing in there. So while there is still interest in him, to go back down the road, if that interest is high, it's a no-brainer for us and for him as well, because he's 30 years old, approaching 36. He's 36, sorry, approaching 31. He's not going to want to be sitting on the bench, or not even on the bench. He's going to want to be playing games. So I think this is going to suit everybody here to just say, thanks very much, didn't work out, all the best in the future. And then we will all watch as he goes on to have a phenomenal second half of the season and wins a Player of the Year award for 5 months worth of work or something ridiculous.
That would be very Rangers, wouldn't it? Mm. Okay, Marty, it's your turn to have the difficult question now. Why should we keep Joe Rothwell?
I think this is slightly harder than the last one. I think the only argument that you can have really is that he's not really had a long-term spell in the team. Outside of that, I'm struggling. He's not really given anybody anything to write home about. I think he even gave an interview to Rangers TV, it was about a month in, maybe a month and a half in, where he says that he knows his performances are below par. So maybe he could come back and surprise us. I don't know, but the likelihood is very slim to none. I don't want to slate the guy because he's obviously had a good career. He's not playing in the Championship if he can't play football. So I do agree with the comments, unfortunately, that it just shows that Championship teams aren't the right quality that we should be looking for. But again, the only argument that I can give, and it is a real stretch, is that he's not had a prolonged spell in the team where he can actually have an impact. But again, he has had an opportunity and he didn't take it. To his own admittance as well, he didn't take it. So I'm struggling for positives for him, unfortunately.
I think that's fair. Okay, I've popped it in there, the poll in the chat for you guys. Should we sell Joe Rothwell? I do need to correct myself. I misspoke at the beginning. We didn't get him for free. We did pay 400k around about for him. So there's a small amount of money to potentially make back there. So if we can get $500,000 to $1 million for him and just make that money back, I think that would be fine. But I shall leave it in your hands, chat. What do you think? The ultimate question that this could be our first 100% one. Let's see. While they're voting on that, one other player that we've not touched on tonight that we didn't include due to he's injured still, as far as I'm aware, so therefore probably unlikely to be sold. But we'll touch on him seeing as we've got a couple of minutes. As Rabbi Matondo, as we mentioned in the comments a few times, Alan here, can we loan out Matondo to anyone? I'll be mean to you, Marty. Is there any reasons to keep Rabbi Matondo? If you had to come up with one, could you? Is there?
He has shown glimpses in the odd game that he has played, but again, he's one of those players that's far too inconsistent, and we've had quite a lot of them recently. But that he has got quality there. It's just getting it out of him seems to be the problem, and I don't know whether that's a problem at Rangers where we're having problems getting the best out of players, or whether it's just a mentality issue with the player. But he's not a desperately bad player. I mean, if you could put him in any other team in the Premiership, he'd be more than capable of performing. I think the exception of that would be currently Hearts, Celtic, and ourselves. So he's not a desperately bad player. We've had worse. We've currently got worse with Joe Rothwell. So I could see the argument on both sides. Me personally, I would quite like to see him go because I think he's had his time at Rangers. But again, we've got worse options at the club, and we could definitely do much worse than keeping on to him. So, yeah, I'm not particularly fussed either way. Obviously, like I said, I would rather him go than stay. But if he was to stay, I wouldn't kick up a fuss about it.
John, a lot of people talk about Matondo's wages, which are reported to be anywhere from sort of 20 to 30k. Personally, I spent some time looking into that because it irked me, the idea that he was getting 30k. And I can't find anything other than one article that seems to have started that rumor. I think he's probably more likely to be mid-20s at best. Still a significant chunk of change, though, for ourselves and where we are. For me, the biggest problem with Matondo isn't so much his form or his playing ability. It's the fact that he's just never fit. He's another player that, for me, when he plays, has actually been okay. He's obviously got a couple of goals that people will remember. That Celtic one in particular will be his main legacy. I don't think it's unfair to say. But for me, the biggest problem, he's just another player that he might be good. He could potentially have done a job for us, but he's just never fit.
Yeah. I think it's kind of back to what I was saying about Gazzama earlier, is mentally weak. I'd be willing to bet you that come the 30th of January, or maybe not even as late as that, the 10th of January, Matondo will be injured again. It'll be something's went, and that's him. He'll just see out the season with us, and I think his contract's up in the summer anyway. But it's that kind of like, well, I don't need to do anything for my wages. He just fills me that kind of player off. He's getting paid a really handsome wage that he will not get anywhere else. The easiest thing for him to do is just sit it out, earn his money, and see what happens in the summer. Just a very, very strange signing and very strange player, because you are right. There's clearly something there, a lot of pace, but just mentally just doesn't seem there at all.
Yep, indeed. I actually think he's very similar to Gazzama. He's got a bit. I think there's an argument he's got better output from the evidence I've seen. So, say when he has had his short stints in the team, he's gotten goals and assists. It's just that, as I say, I think he's only had 2 decent runs, and that's been about it. I have stuck one last little poll in just as we finish up for you guys. Just as a wee fun question: who would you rather, Gassama or Matondo? I'll be interested to see if anyone votes for Matondo, but that's not a bad comparison either, Mr. Baseman 2040. He's a poor man, Sakala. Yep, he's not as fit as Sakala. He doesn't get as many goals, but he is quick. He does seem to have a cheeky smile on him whenever we see him. He seems to be enjoying life, which I'm sure I'd be enjoying life if I was doing nothing and getting paid 25 grand a week. I'm sure he is probably enjoying life, but that's a bit of that as well. Well done. This is comment of the day. Matondo would break his wrist signing for a new club. Loving that, Alan. That is an absolute cracker. Well done. Well done. So the ending of that poll, 86% would like Gassama, 14% would take Matondo. I think that's probably a fair reflection. I'm going to throw him in. We're just hitting the hour there. So just for the last minute or two, the only other player we were potentially going to hit on was Nicholas Raskin, who the guys touched on yesterday. I think they did kind of cover both sides to a certain degree, but as we're sort of focusing on selling, I thought it would be worth maybe touching on him just at the end here from that perspective. Nicholas Raskin, obviously this extra year on his contract sort of appeared out of nowhere a few weeks ago, which I think is a big win-win for us. For me, the conventional wisdom is that we keep Nicholas Raskin to the summer for the same reason as Asgard, is that he's almost certainly going to the World Cup. And unless he gets injured, he's probably unlikely to damage his value. So, he either comes back having not done much and therefore his value stays the same, or ideal scenario, he performs well and he's a player then that is on the radar of a couple of clubs, so we get a bidding war and get some money for him. The only reason for me, and I'm going to put this to both of you guys, that we would sell him in January, because his form hasn't been the best this year, I think it's fair to say. So it's not as if he's in a position that if we were to lose him, it would be completely detrimental. I think the rise of Conor Barron in particular would go some way to mitigating if we were to lose him. But the only reason for me to lose him in January, if someone comes in with like a 15 mil plus bid, a serious money, or some maybe would argue 10 million plus. I would maybe say 15. If someone came in with that kind of money, he's meant to be valued around about 10, 11 million pounds. So if someone came in to us in January and said, we'll give you 15 million for him right now, I think you have to consider that. But otherwise, for me, in terms of January, we keep him. What's your thoughts, Marty?
I think for the sake of the club, we've got to keep him. I mean, realistically, the guy shouldn't be looking anywhere with the World Cup coming in the summer. He shouldn't be looking to go anywhere this January, especially with an unknown going to a new club, whether he'd be selected week in, week out. I know he's not picked every game for Rangers at the minute because of his form and obviously the issues that he had with Russell at the start of the season. I think there's been somewhat of a bridge building to get that extra year on there, and I think that's been beneficial to the club, because that means further down the line, potentially in the summer after the World Cup, we could look at selling them on for a bigger profit than what we would in January. I know January's prices are a little bit more inflated than normal, but realistically, as a club and especially as a player as well, you can't really be looking to move in January when you've got the World Cup coming up in the summer, and you're now on guaranteed to be in that World Cup squad. So realistically, we should be looking to hold on to him till at least the summer, if not the following January, because his values are obviously going to increase being in the Belgium team, because they're not like a mediocre team that are in the World Cup. They're a strong team, and he's got strong, good players around him. So he is obviously going to increase in value, and I would certainly like to see him through to at least the end of the season.
Yep. John, IB Rocks 1962 in the comments has suggested that he's worried that he potentially downs tools as the season goes on to avoid injury for the World Cup. I personally think that if I'm Nicholas Raskin, that's a huge risk, because although he is showing up for the team at the moment, there's still a lot of really quality players in his position that Belgium have to choose from. And so if I'm him, I'm doing my best to play my best to make sure and 100% guarantee I'm in that squad for the World Cup. Is that a worry that you would have at all, or as I said, do you?
Not that. But I think Nico Raskin has to up his game big time, because he's not the best midfielder in a team that's third in the league and near the bottom of the Europa League and not going to have Europe after January. So this is not Nico Raskin from the first 5 months of this year. His form has gone off a cliff and it ain't coming back. I personally think he should have been dropped from the team to get a boot in the backside to say, you're not a guaranteed starter here. You need to up your game. Because I've seen comments there, 17.5 to 22 million, 20 million plus. He's barely playing like a £5 million midfielder. I may be seen as being controversial, but we talk about people like Asgard and all these guys, and they're not good enough, blah, blah, blah. I think Nico Raskin's a great player, but we talk about him as 15 and 20 million pound players. He's not anywhere near that. He can't kick his own backside if you're valuing him like that. So Nico Raskin needs to get his form back. Never mind about moving club and being a worry before and down in tools and injury. He needs to find his form, because if Mohamed Diamande has showed us anything, poor form in this team can see you fall out of favour in your national team. And, just because your reputation has went previously, it'll count for nothing, because you've seen it with Conor Barron. Anybody else think that Conor Barron's form takes a kick on because he's went Scotland are in a World Cup? I want to show what I can do. How many other Belgian midfielders will be sitting saying, hold on a minute, I want to show what I can do? He's got to be careful, Raskin. In terms of January, I think the extra year takes the pressure off. I think if you didn't have the extra year, you'd be selling him no matter what in January. I think collectively, as a supporter, as a club and all that, we need to think about, we're talking about how this squad needs completely gutted again. How do we finance it? £2 million profit for Gassama, selling Raskin. We're going to have to fund all this. We have to pay for it somehow. So we're going to be caught between a rock and a hard place, I imagine, of what we can do in January, what we want to do in the summer. The next 4 games up to January 2nd, 4 or 5 games, might dictate that. If we lose 2 or 3 of those games and it's like, actually, we're falling further behind in the league, let's not go OTT in January. If we win our next 4 games, we sit and go, hold on a minute here. We had some real quality, 3 or 4 players of real quality. We can win this league. So I think Raskin's a hard one. I think if he stays, he stays. If he goes, so long as the money's right, fine. And it's reinvested right.
There's a big question and one to leave us with, I think, if we can invest it right. We've no sporting director right now, so presumably that decision will be rested squarely on our new manager's shoulders. So again, I'm cautiously optimistic, seeing as he seems to be seeing the right things from his position as manager. So hopefully he can do the same when it comes to purchasing players. One last question just here from Alan. Will Kelly want to move in January to play games to make the World Cup? I think Kelly's in an advantageous position. He's been getting picked regardless, and Scotland don't really have a huge abundance of great goalkeepers. So I would quietly say he's on the plane anyway, because who's ahead of him, to be honest. But I mean, never rule any of these things out. But I think Kelly's probably going to be okay. That's all for us tonight. We've run a little bit over. But as I say, I just thought it was worth just touching on Raskin before we finished. Big thank you to both Marty and John for joining me this evening and chatting through those. And I apologise to you both for forcing you to consider keeping some of those players. I know how painful that must have been. But hey ho, that's what we do here. We do the tough work at the Journal so that you don't have to. Thank you to everyone in the comments for watching, for contributing with your comments. Again, some great ones in there, particularly that Matondo comment. I'll be laughing about that for the rest of the week. And for getting involved in the polls as well. We've got more great stuff coming for the rest of the week, so stay tuned in for our shows coming up. We're going to be doing our a show tomorrow on tactics and sort of discussing a little bit about our difficulty in creating chances, what's maybe changed in recent weeks under Danny Role, and doing a bit of a deep dive into that. We've got our usual Q&A on Thursday. If you've got anything you want to throw at us, then do tune in for that one. And then the new show at midday on Friday before pre and post match, which both will feature my lovely self for the Hearts game, which, as I say, is a huge match in our hopeful still attempt to get ourselves into this title this season, as bonkers as it feels to be able to say that after the start that we had. Thanks for tuning in. My name's been Doug, been with Marty and John. You've been watching the Rangers Journal, and just remember that every night is a Rangers Journal night. Thanks, guys.